Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you guys enjoyed last week's video on this nice red MR2. I can't tell you, working on this car, this chassis is super clean. Everything is, there's not a single rust spot anywhere, which if you guys know me and red MR2s, I've had some experience with rust. But anyways, really nice car to work on. Nothing is seized up so far. Everything pulls really nicely. So today is the big install. We're going to install those Bob Fam 808 coilovers, and we're going to get these Wilwood big brake kit on in the front and the rear. So without further delay, let's get started. We're going to jump right into it. We're going to start on the back. So we're going to begin from the back and then work our way to the front. I chose to do the back because it's a little bit more involved, since we have the rear, obviously the rear caliper, and then we have an e-brake setup separate. So I figured we'll just kind of work on the harder piece first. So by the time I getting a little bit exhausted, I can just work on the front, which is not so involved. Let's get right into it. Alright, so first things first, let's start off with the rear brake setup. Now the first thing we got to do is we got to remove this dust shield. You cannot carry over your old dust shield, and you can't. These things, one, they're pain in the butt to remove and a pain in the butt to install, because you got to remove the outer hub here to get them on or off without damaging them. We're not going to do that. We're going to damage them. We're just going to rip them off. So what I'm going to do is I have some snippers. I'm going to literally cut it right in here. I'm going to bring you guys closer in a second. But before we do that, we got to pull 3 10mm bolts that are holding this thing on. Then we're going to snip it, and then we're going to pry it off. Let's get to it. Alright, so I got my little impact here. Very light duty. I'm going to pull 3 bolts. And I'm going to only pull 1 for now. I'm going to leave these 2 intact because when I snip this, I don't want this thing moving around. So just a little technique. Obviously you can fight with it if you want. Now right in here, I'll try to get the light. See right in this little joint? I'm going to cut it, and the whole idea is so we can separate the 2 halves and slip this thing out. So let's get right into it. Alright, takes a little bit of wrestling, but as you can see, just get 2 pry bars and just go at it. There's no point trying to save this thing, so just rip it apart, get it out. You're going to throw it away anyways. Alright, so that's done. Now let's get our air cleaned up a little bit, and then we're going to pull the strut out and put in the Bob Fam strut, since we're doing the combo, which is the suspension and brakes at the same time. So we're removing the front dust shield, and unlike where we use the impact there, you can kind of get a socket in here, so you got to use a wrench. So that's the only difference really, but the process is the same. Just use a snip in the back, pull these bolts, and then you just pry it off like you saw me with the 2 screw pry bars in the back. You're going to do the same on the front here. Alright, so this one is a lot easier to come off. So this area, it's just easy, I don't know. But anyways, it's off. We're going to clean this up as well, just like we did on the back, and throw the suspension on and the brakes. Alright, so I'm going to get the rear coilover in the back, but I wanted to show you guys now the way this comes from, I guess from the manufacturer or supplier, which is Bob Fam. They max out this camber adjustment here. So this is literally, if I remember correctly, it's slid all the way over into here, which I don't think the car needs that much camber, so I kind of put it in the center. So this is one adjustment I made versus how it came in. The way you do that, you just pull these 4 hex bolts, and then it gives the camber plate the ability to slide back or forth. And like I said, I just kind of put it in the center. So this is, I just wanted to point it out. When you're doing your setup, obviously you're going to tailor it to whatever application, whatever wheels you have. This has 9-inch wheels with 245s, I believe, on the back. So I don't think we need to be that aggressive in here. So let's move on. I'm gonna pull the 2 strut bolts right now, and I'm gonna pull the 3 on the top, which are these 3 up top. And we're gonna drop out this old suspension, throw this one in. All right, so as you guys see, I put a piece of cardboard right here because what happens is, especially on a stock suspension, the strut is gonna come down and the boot is right underneath, so you don't wanna damage it. So I just put a piece of cardboard. I'm gonna pull the spindle out, and then we can move this thing away and slide it down, and you get your suspension out. So ask me why I put this thing, because not on this car, but I learned the hard way on my Subaru when swapping on my suspension, and I literally tore the boot, and that was a bummer because I was trying to help myself and it ended up costing me more money. So I just always get like a piece of cardboard. Some guys use a rag. This works really well, as you saw, and it's cheap. Okay, all right, so suspension is out. We're gonna throw out the bob fam now and get it installed. Well guys, I have the coil over here, and just a quick tip: before you go ahead and throw it up under the car, you want to put on the end links. Now you could literally just drop all of this and use this little stubby piece and bolt it in, but I'm just gonna leave everything in and throw it up. It goes on the outside, so this is how the shock is gonna be installed in the car. This little triangle piece points away from the vehicle. Obviously the strut mount is here, which bolts to the spindle right over here. So on your factory setup, the end link is typically here, but these are much larger, so they don't clear. So you wanna put them in like this. It's a 17mm nut on the inside, a 14mm on the outside, and we're gonna torque this to 35 foot-pounds. All right, so always put this in before, because once it's in the car, it's a little bit tight, and it's just way easier doing it like this. All right, so up top, you're gonna torque these bolts to 35 foot-pounds. I'm just gonna go ahead and do that even before I align it on the bottom, because I just wanna get these in place. So. I'll just do all 3. This one is a little bit tight to here, so probably do that off camera, but I will get it to 35 foot-pounds. All right, so we have these nuts here torqued up to 35 foot-pounds. Now, as I was discussing earlier with the camber plate, before the way it comes, this is literally sitting right over here. So I just kind of centered it. And part of the reason why I did that, I have the tin suspension on my car, and it's actually centered and the car drives perfectly fine. So I figured I'd do this. Doing that obviously gives it more camber, but I think this is a good, safe way to start. And when you bring it for alignment, these guys can adjust it if they need to. But I'm fairly confident that's gonna work out really well. So that's done, and it even works. The cap goes on. The factory cap can fit in place, so that's pretty cool. All right, so Bob Fam supplies this camber bolt. It obviously gives more adjustment. As you can see, it's narrow here. So we're gonna put this one on the top and use back one of the factory bolts on the bottom. So I'm gonna go ahead and slip it in. Now, this is kind of heavy. So you're gonna use a jack just to kind of help you to lift the spindle up and line it up into place. And then we're gonna throw those bolts in. I'm sure it's going to be easy for some of you. It might be a hassle for some. It might be easy for me. It might be a hassle, but hey, you just got to do it. So let's do it. All right, that one went in pretty good. And let's see if the other one is going to cooperate. It should. All right, there you go. And then I put it so that the nut is on this side because we're going to have the caliper here. So it's just a much better clearance if you put the nut on this side, so you can actually slide this bolt outward without any obstruction from the caliper on this side. All right, so we're going to go ahead and bolt these up. I won't tighten these yet because I'm going to put on the brake rotor. And I'm going to try to balance this now. Obviously, I'm not an alignment guy, but I'm trying to balance both sides equally. So I'm going to show you what I do. It is certainly, you know, not a recommended way of aligning your car, but I got to give it some ballpark figures. And I'll show you in a second. Let me show you what I'm going to do. And if you see right here, you can almost make out this angle. It's tilted inwards, so you could tighten these camber bolts where it's inward like that, where you get a lot of camber, or fully outward. So what I'm going to do, as I was telling you, I'm going to basically put on the caliper. I'm going to use my level, right, which is what I use to fix my house. But I'm going to put it along here, and I'm going to try to get this caliper basically where it's showing straight down, like kind of like at a 90 degree to the ground. And that's what I'm going to use to kind of spec this thing. Now obviously when suspension goes down, it's going to camber in a little bit, but I don't want it to be too aggressive cambered in like that. I want it to be out like this. And that's kind of part of the reason too why I adjusted the top and brought it more to the center. So anyways, we'll tighten this up in a second. I just wanted to show the brackets for the brakes. So here's the adapter bracket. It does come with hardware as well. So there's a longer bolt and a shorter bolt. The shorter bolt goes on the bracket to mount it to the spindle. So it's going to go in. You see this little groove section right here. This goes basically towards the car. So your shorter one goes in like this, and you basically thread it in. And all of these are torqued to 50 foot-pounds. So this one, all four torqued to 50 foot-pounds. Now the kit does come with washers like this, a split washer and a closed washer. I'm not using the washer on the one that mounts to the spindle, because if you look at when I put it in like this, it really doesn't get much threading inside of the bracket, and I want it to go basically all the way to the end here and be flush. You don't want it sticking out, but you want it flush. So I only use the split washer on the outer one. On the inner one, I will use both the split and the solid washer, but I just wanted to point that out. Now I'm going to put some blue Loctite here. We're going to bolt this down and torque them up. So hopefully you guys see what I'm talking about. See, I literally used only one washer, and you see it doesn't even get all the way flush with the end. So if I put another washer that's supplied with the kit right here, then this would even have less bite into this bracket, which to me is not great. So that's why I opted not to use these. All right, we have the caliper bracket torqued down to 50 foot-pounds, and now I'm going to put on the e-brake bracket. Now this one should bend or offset towards the car and inside of the car. So when you see it, it will go like this. It will curve back towards the vehicle. It does come with two 10mm bolts, and just looking at these things, they're pretty small. They go where we had the dust shield on. So I would say, just looking at the design, you probably don't want to be using your handbrake to go drift or anything with this, because I don't feel like these are very sturdy bolts. Obviously they were used to hold on a dust shield before, and we're using it for an e-brake now. You're gonna torque these to 144 inch-pounds or 12 foot-pounds. So very light torque as well. So again, just be careful when you use them because they are not, there's just two little bolts, 10mm bolts that are basically holding these brackets in place. All right, so now we have this. We're gonna go ahead, throw on our nice looking fancy rotor here, and we're gonna get the caliper on. So it is, I like to put it on, and I like to use two of our lug nuts to basically hold this thing in place. So we can put our caliper on and basically line up our pads and everything. That's a nice looking rotor, I gotta tell you. It's not cheap too, so it should look good. But anyways, just wanted to say it looks really nice. And now we're gonna go ahead and just tighten it up a little bit, not going crazy. Just wanna make sure it's nice and centered. And now we're gonna, well actually before we put on our caliper, I'm gonna show you guys. So I have this level here. So what I'm gonna do is basically set the level on the caliper right here. And if you see it right here, I'm gonna basically move this thing. Let's see, you see when I go like that, you see the ball is moving. So I'm basically gonna get it where it's centered, and that's where I'm gonna tighten up these bolts. Again, very on the scientific way of doing this, but you gotta do it somehow. So I'm making sure both sides are set exactly the same. So at least the car is configured on the same on both sides until we get this to an alignment shop. So with that said, I'll hold this as centered and I'll tighten these strut bolts up. And then we're basically done with the strut outside of the end link for now. All right, hopefully I don't get too much heat in the comment section for this, but hey, you gotta do what you gotta do, and this is what I got to work with. So yeah, I'm gonna tighten it up now, and we're gonna move on to the caliper. Calipers are going in. I'm putting in the hex bolts. So I think you guys can probably see better than I can up there. And these, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to torque these down to 50 foot-pounds as well. Alright guys, I got the e-brake on. There's two hex bolts right here, one here, one here. You're gonna torque those to 25 foot-pounds. This one, depending on the torque wrench you have, you can't really get one in. So I couldn't get a torque wrench in. So I just used this little wrench here and basically tighten it up. But it's not a lot of torque anyway, so just, you know, be careful when you do it. One here, and this is the e-brake caliper. Now there is a separate cable that goes onto here and it loops under. I don't know if I'm going to cover that in this video because we got to bleed these brakes, and for the purpose of this video I'm probably not going to show the bleeding. I may do a second video bleeding it, I don't know, and when I do that I'm going to connect the cables and everything. But for now, the e-brake is on, caliper is on, well the two calipers are on. Now we're going to go ahead and throw in the EBC red brake pads, and on these calipers is super easy. There's a bolt that goes through here. As a matter of fact, maybe I should bring you guys on the other, well, there you go, camera is coming around. So there's this little thing right here, and it basically sits just in here, and then this bolt goes in, and you have a nut on the back end. So replacing these pads is super easy. Just gonna take them, and you're gonna slide them in like this, just like that. And the other one, you slide it in, just like that. And then you're gonna replace the pins. Might need to, these pads are very thick, so might need to tap it a little bit and just shimmy it, but there you go. And you just gotta give it a little bit of love. Now these calipers are also powder coated, so the thickness on the paint makes it a little bit harder, but once everything wears in, it should be fine. So we're just gonna tap this in, put this bolt through, button it up. I'll show you when it's done. All right, besides the e-brake cable, as I mentioned before, we're on the home stretch here. So this is the brake cable that comes with the kit. Now, the factory kit has a piece that bolts into here. These kits are separate, so they provided this bracket. So the way you're gonna do this is gonna go in like this, and then we're gonna slide in the brake cable. We're gonna connect this end right here, and then we're gonna connect this end on the back of the caliper, and we're gonna route it through the strut, which is right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it together. That wraps up the rear brake. Now we're gonna move on to the front. So hope you guys like it. It's a lot of colors, but again, owner preference. He loves the green and the hats. I think they only come in this anodized finish. In hindsight, they probably would have done much better, all coordinated, but this is what it is, guys. So this is a really beefy brake setup, and it should perform well on this car. With that said, let's get this brake cable on, and I'm gonna move on to the front. I won't bore you with this one because it's just basically connecting a cable from here to the back, and we're done. And I think you guys, if you got this far, you'll be able to figure this out. Well guys, I wanted to give you guys a preview of this e-brake cable. So here we have the rear, and as you can see, the cable is in place. You really can't mess this install up because the way the cable comes, you have these two nuts that are basically clamped onto the bottom here. So, and this is a smaller end up here. The larger end goes under the middle of the car where your typical factory e-brake cable would be installed. And I'll just show you the routing. Otherwise, you just basically follow the path and get it installed. I'll show you how I routed it. So in terms of routing, there you go. It goes all the way down. It runs under the axle boot right there, and then it carries forward through the brackets that a typical e-brake cable would be, and it runs up under the where both cables connect, and you can do the adjustment on the e-brake cable. Now it's kind of, I mean, it's just a matter of design. It's just how you have to get it to work. As you can see right over there, I use some tie strap to hold it onto the trailing arm just to give it some security. I'll show you what that looks like. I used a little piece of rubber hose and some tie straps just to get it on so it doesn't get in the wheel of the wheel when it's turning. But yeah, that's it. All right guys, so here we are on the front of the car. We're gonna throw in the coilover first. The front is a lot easier, both for coilovers and definitely for brakes, but so this should go quicker. Let's throw this in. We're gonna put this up in the strut housing up here. Got a lot of room to work with here, and it's, you don't have to stretch too much. So let me just bring it up top here and just push it up into the arch here, and then you're gonna get your bolts. You're gonna throw them on. These are torqued to 25 foot-pounds. So unlike the rear, sorry, where we did 35 foot-pounds, the fronts are 25. So you just drop these in. Just gonna put another nut here to hold this, and then I can relax. Come up top, drop my washers on. And we're just gonna go ahead and torque this down while we're at it, so we can be finished with up top here. Torque wrench out, 25 foot-pounds. As you guys see, my wrench is a very light duty. Helps a lot to get the nuts on, but it doesn't, you won't over torque anything with that thing. Because I really don't like to use impact if I don't have to. Because I just think it messes up the nuts and the bolts. And it's just nice to feel it when you're working on it, especially on the older cars. All right, strut is in. Again, I left these loose for now. We're gonna torque it after I do my little level thing over here. And now we're gonna put the bracket on. So this the raised portion goes to the inside. Use this smaller bolt that comes with the kit. And again, 50 foot-pounds here to get the caliper on. This one I'm using a split washer and a solid washer. get the torque wrench out and do our thing. Our rotor is going on, and then once we get the rotor on, then we can get our caliper on. Or better yet, once I get a rotor on, I can tighten up my strut bolts because I can use my leveling kit here. Tighten these up, and then we're going to throw the calipers on. And then once that's on, it's just brake pads and lines, and it's pretty much done. But you guys are going to follow me along because you're not going to bed till I'm going to bed. Now I'm going to use the longer bolts to get the caliper on. Always use some blue Loctite just for safety. Alright guys, so here's an issue that popped up. I actually did the other side already, but I was just showing this one in the video. So these calipers are powder coated, so when you tighten up the bracket and everything, like you can see, you can't turn the rotor. And if I spin this thing, what I found on the other side was the powder coat is so thick on the inside, it's literally getting stuck on the rotor. So what I'm gonna have to do is take it off again, and then we're gonna see where it's binding. And I'm gonna have to clearance it, like just grind it down a little bit. Okay, see, it will turn, but should not be that tight. So yeah, so just a little bit of work. Actually, if you look up here, you can actually see it. You see where it's rubbing on the caliper? So now I'm gonna take off. I'm just doing this so I can see exactly where I need to clearance and just grind it down. But again, here's the issue with powder coating. Pain in the butt. A lot more work for me. I'm sweating like crazy, but it's all part of the job. So let me take this caliper off again, and then we're going to clearance it, and it's going to work. And basically from here is we're going to put the pads in just the same way we did on the rear. We're going to get the brake line in, and technically we're done here. But I'm sure you guys want to see this rotor at least spinning, so let me clearance it, put it back up, and I hope you guys see, you know, it's a lot of work, but hey, if you want to have this type of setup, this is what you got to invest your time, and obviously you put your money into the parts as well. All right, so here's the caliper. So when I took it off, you could see where the rotor was contacting right here, and there's a heavy buildup of powder coat. So I mean, the tolerances are very small. So what I'm doing is just taking down some of the paint, and we're gonna put it back on and try it. That's what worked on the other side, so I'm hoping it does the same on this side. So here goes. Gotta ruin this little paint, but it's part of the way you gotta do it to get it to work. Alright guys, so we're at the final step. I just put the pads in. I did have to clearance inside the caliper just to get some of the powder coating off. I must tell you that the tolerances are very tight. I don't know if it's I know the powder coat could create some issues, but it seems like it's super tight. I mean, if you look at it, it could be because of this style rotor, because mine does not have, it's literally, you can barely get anything between here. Look at that, it's so tight. See, tolerance is so tight in here that it was crazy, but there you go. Before I took the powder coating down, like you saw it, you could not turn this thing, it was just stuck. Which I guess eventually if you drove the car, it would grind it away, but that's just not the way we want to do it here. So I'm happy I was able to get it clearanced, got the pads in. So now we just gotta get this brake hose on, wrap it up, and again, brake hose simply connects from the back here up here. So I'm gonna put that in off camera and we'll bleed the brakes and hopefully this thing works well. I'm really hoping the ride height on the Bob Fam coilovers is set to where, you know, the rake looks good and the car stance is good. Otherwise, I'm gonna jack this thing up, adjust the coilovers again. And if that's the case, then maybe we'll do a video on that. But for now, it's installed. There you go. We got Bob Fam coilovers. We got our big brake kit. I'm sweating, and you guys know we're in Florida, so it is super hot. The whole country is hot at this point, but yeah, even though I'm in the garage, it's super hot, but we're done, and I'm happy to say it's complete. At least install complete. So with that said, guys, let's wrap it up. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Next video, the same car, we're gonna do the rear valve cover because that one is leaking. So we got a little bit more work left on this car, and then hopefully get it back to the owner, and we'll see what's next.